Hello, this is Eclipse at Dusk. Just call me Dusk or Eclipse. Welcome back to another video. As for why it took so long, what I used for text-to-speech was glitching, still not fixed. Found something else in the meantime to use. And I also changed what I do my editing on. So let's enjoy this wonderful story. P.S. I did not get permission to do this. I just wanted to make one and found this amazing fanfic. And as my bio states on my channel, if I ever get monetization, this video will not be monetized. What does eternal life mean to you? Wonder Fuel 666. Summary. Midoriya Izuku had a weak quirk, no quirk. Maybe a weak body. Maybe a weak mind. Definitely no weak values. So, when you really think about it, it was really no surprise that Raiden EI reincarnated into this boy. When she opened her eyes again, she rejoiced in the mercy of the universe. EI could finally finish her search, except now she existed in a more immortal body. Her time was limited. Or, the new world of quirks needs an Archon to restore eternity. Izuku Midoriya is here to do it. Discontinued. Notes. Most of the things in parentheses and with incorrect capitalization is Raiden talking in his head, or just has to do with her. Example. You're not crazy, just a reincarnation, I believe. You'll kind of just have to use your own judgment/context clues. Chapter 1. Late Start, New Beginnings. Chapter Text. Izuku Midoriya. A plain kid in all honesty. Quirk. Limited summon, named by him, since it wasn't registered. He has the ability to summon two preset items at will. The first is a spear. The second, well, he doesn't know. Midoriya swears up and down that it exists, but no matter how much he tries, he can't summon it. He says it feels like a chess piece. Whenever he reaches for it, it feels like it's being held back. Sometimes, on days when he's particularly bored and he pulls with all his might on it, Midoriya will feel an electric shock pulse throughout his body. The catch was he manifested it very late. Or rather, it took him too long to figure out what it was. He was about 7.5 when he finally got it. No one really tries that much to pull things out of a secret dimension, and besides that, Izuku had to have a certain level of maturity before he could really unlock it. His court doctor was also very unprofessional. Despite the correlation between the toe joint and a lack of quirk being 70%, once the x-ray was done, he didn't go any further in the testing. Once Midoriya realized he could pull a spear out of thin air, he was ecstatic. He was playing alone at the park when it happened. It was one of those times when Kakin would roughhouse with Izuku and then leave him where no one could find him. Most of the time, Izuku was too tired or in too much pain to leave the park until he got some more energy. He began to practice his quirk when he felt something else inside his storage space. Midoriya tried to pull it out, and eventually the feeling of being electrocuted stopped his attempts. Tears welling up in his eyes, he vowed that he wouldn't show anyone his quirk until he got whatever was hidden inside him out. It would simply be too embarrassing to show up with an underdeveloped quirk. Plus, weapons were too dangerous for little kids to be handling, so he was hesitant at first to even pull out his spear. And thus, Izuku Midoriya was still legally quirkless. Even as he trained his battle techniques with a spear and endlessly tugged on the chess piece inside of him, he refused to show his quirk to anyone. A weak quirk. No quirk. Kids around Izuku didn't like him. He was scrawny, he couldn't even fully control his quirk after 10 years of having it, and he was creepy. He muttered to himself in class, and half the time, he didn't even realize he was doing it. No one really listened to his rambles, but those who did quickly stopped after they heard the obsessive repetition of the word eternity or eternal. Midoriya said that he practiced weapons training, but no one believed him. No dojo in their right mind would accept a scrawny, stupid, weak, quirkless, creepy kid. They forget about the not-so-official ways to learn things. Plus, the quirkless were naturally inferior. If he even touched a weapon, he would probably be horribly maimed, right? When they told him to shut up or just otherwise harassed him, he would flinch for a second. Then, a flash of steely anger, calculated thoughts, would be seen across his face, this moment shorter than the flinch. Finally, Izuku would just hang his head and let it happen. Maybe a weak body, maybe a weak mind. But there was something special about Izuku. Yes, in a world where superpowers existed, a plain-looking, stupid, quirkless, and creepy kid had something special about him. His will. His drive. He was a stubborn child, and he refused to let go of his ideals, nor his dreams. Ever since he could understand the question, no matter what Izuku had faced that day or the day before, his answer to "do you want to be a hero?" would always be yes. Definitely no weak values. So, despite how different he was from her, it really can't be much of a surprise that when Ei's life finally ended, she ended up in Izuku's body. Of course, with her everlasting search and longing for endlessness, she didn't accept her death. After her experiences with the Traveler, however, Ei feels she dealt with fading better than how she would have normally. When she opened her eyes again, she rejoiced in the mercy of the universe. Ei could finally finish her search, except now she existed in a more mortal body. Her time was limited. Bullet. Now normally, this is when I would pass out your high school application and job goal forms. But I know you all want to be heroes anyways. The teacher yelled, throwing a stack of papers into the air. Quirks went off as the students hooped and cheered, causing total chaos. Izuku sunk into his seat, sighing as he almost wished to join in on the fun. He knew, though, that if he summoned his spear, some girls would scream, and the teacher would yell at him. Some older, responsible voice inside his head called his classmates uncivilized, and he somewhat agreed. Didn't they know that public quirk usage was illegal, especially after 10 years of that being drilled into their heads? "Hey, Teach," a certain blonde boy scoffed, "I don't deserve to be lumped in with these wannabes. I'm going to be the best of the best, while they'll be lucky to be some random sidekick." "Oh, Kaken, you never change, do you? And maybe that's the best possible course of action." Izuku sighed at his ex-best friend's jeers and how his classmates so easily fell for the challenge. Settle down," the teacher lazily called, obviously not caring too much about his students' misbehavior. "Bakugo, I see you're applying for UA." Izuku prayed to every god that was willing to listen to him, that his teacher wasn't about to say his name. "Oh, Midoriya, aren't you thinking about applying there too?" "Damn it." A smug grin flashed for a small moment across the teacher's face. He totally knew what he just did. "Huh, Deco, you know damn well UA won't accept some creepy, quirkless loser like you." Midoriya scooched away and pushed down the anger in his body, far enough that his chair almost tipped backwards and he felt hollow. Kaken, I just thought that maybe I could try. Not try. Not really. You would do it? Do you think you can be a hero by just trying? What a joke. Just drop dead already, Deco. Cold, silent rage poured into his clenched fists. Midoriya longed to hold his spear, to gouge it into Kaken's skin and teach him a lesson of who is truly superior. As soon as it had built up, it poured out with his following deep breaths. He didn't even validate the comment from Kaken with a reply, just lowered his head and begged for the school day to just end. "Bullet, we're not done here, Deku," Kaken sneered, slamming his smoking hand onto Izuku's desk. Izuku stayed silent. "Too good to talk to us now, huh, nerds?" Kaken taunted. "Maybe I should just take this notebook dash." Hey! Midoriya cried in protest as Kaken snatched his notebook up from his desk. "Give it back." "Oh, now I can get a reaction out of you? Is it his diary or something?" One of Bakuga's followers laughed. Oh, it says something on the front. "Read it." Please." Kaken no dash, Izuku pleaded, but to no avail. Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. Kaken took a second to take this in before bursting out laughing and burning it to a crisp. "For the future? Really, Deku? Honestly, I'm almost impressed you still think you have a future right now. Keep up the path you're on, and you'll be lucky to find some scraps in the dumpster next to that old seafood restaurant. Get a fucking life, Deku." After his whole degrading spiel, Kaken threw the notebook out the window. Izuku flung himself after it, only to watch in horror as it fell right into the koi pond. How did the school even afford that thing? As Midoriya mourned the loss of his hard work, Kaken and his lackeys began to make their way out of the empty classroom. "Hey, Deku," Kaken called out, looking back over his shoulder. "If you really want a better future, why don't you do us all a favor and take a swan dive off the roof? Maybe you'll get a quirk in your next life, too." Little did he know this was already a new reincarnation, one with so much power in a single hair on his head more than Kakin could ever hope to have. Izuku whipped around, fury filling him up and giving him an adrenaline rush. He ached for his spear, more and more. He began to tense his muscles and reach for it, but the expression on Kakin's face made him freeze. Don't let them see your power, not until you can defeat them. Got something to say, creep? Kakin taunted once more. "This what I thought." Izuku waited a bit while he listened to the footsteps of his bullies slowly get further away. Once he was satisfied with their distance from him, he finished gathering his things. He rushed a bit, hoping to get there at just the right time. Not too early, so he wouldn't risk round 2, but also not too late, so his notebook wouldn't be completely destroyed by the water damage. Midoriya finally made his way outside, just in time too, and watched blankly as a koi fish nibbled on his notebook. He grabbed it, scolding the fish for eating something that wasn't fish food, and shook it off. His movements were slow and with no real drive behind them. He didn't care enough at this point. How could he, when he was just so tired? Izuku's walk home was slow as he dragged his feet along the pavement. He idly played with his quirk, trying and failing to pull the chess piece out. Over the years, it had just become a mindless fidget he had taken up. At this point, Midoriya wasn't exactly trying to summon it. He just was bored, and on the off chance it worked, then hey, it was a good day for him. It was because of his mindless fidget that he didn't notice the goop oozing out of the manhole as he walked under the pass. Almost too late, Izuku finally heard the slimy sounds coming from whatever was behind him. Immediately, he reached for his spear, and then a crack of purple lightning struck inside the tunnel. It successfully fried the villain before he could cause any damage to Midoriya, but it also fried Midoriya. At least that's what it felt like. The last thing Midoriya saw before he fell unconscious was the muscular figure of All Might coming to his rescue. Bullet. Waves of memories crashed over his mind. Isn't it beautiful, Yai? A sword, who takes the lives of those who threaten eternity and protects the people of Inazuma. Makoto, don't leave us. Don't leave me. Erosion. Eternity. Yea, protect my Gnosis, will you? You shall be the shogunate and archon of Inazuma. May your eternity and power shine bright. With you by my side, though our mouths stay silent, my heart is at peace. Thunder claps along the distant sea. Only two things exist in this world, those that must be done and those that must not. Only through eternity are you closest to the heavenly principles. Open the plain of Euthymia as your heart to our thriving world of Teyvat. Teyvat. Yea. Thun. Mako. Erosion. No. Eternity. 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 Bullet. Midoriya, Raiden, awoke with a gasp and a pound in his head. The new information was too much for him to handle. What had happened? He looked down in his hand and saw what looked like a chess piece. His brain, not hers, identified it as his Gnosis. This was what he could have never pulled out. How had he done it? Izuku thought back to what had occurred. He was pulling on the cheese, Gnosis, and like always it didn't work. Then he pulled out his spear, and oh my god, Archons. He was stupid. How? In 10 years of having this quirk and analyzing probably thousands of quirks as a hobby, had he never thought to pull out the Gnosis and the spear at the same time? What made Izuku even more sure that he was an idiot was that he only noticed All Might in front of him after the man cleared his throat. Young man, are you all right? You seem dazed. Did that lightning affect you earlier? All Might asked. Huh? Oh yeah, I am F. Stupid stutter. He never really had a huge problem with it because it never really acted up. But now, it was causing him embarrassment on top of embarrassment. I'm fine. Fine. Not that All Might would realize it, but something strange happened. Izuku didn't finally spit it out. Something, or someone else inside of him did it for him. Nice to meet your acquaintance. My name is Raiden Ei, the goddess of eternity, and the overruling archon of Inazuma. Though, I have a feeling those titles aren't very important nowadays, Midoriya, not riding him. He did it, choked on a spit. Where had that voice come from? Inside his head? Oh great, another thing for Kakin to make fun of him for. He was going crazy. You're not crazy, just a reincarnation, I believe. Also, why do we call him Kakin? Isn't that a bit too kind for a bully? Izuku was too stunned to speak. All Might began to sweat a bit at the kid's strange actions. Look, kid, you seem to be all right. I've got places to be. As the #1 hero, next time you encounter a villain, no matter how powerful your quirk is, try to let the heroes take care of it. Okay? I won't tell anyone this time. Haha. Bye now, and stay safe. All Might announced before tensing his muscles and jumping away. Midoriya didn't acknowledge him even a tiny bit. He just continued sitting, exhausted and surprised, in the middle of the street. I know this must be very confusing for you. How about you take some deep breaths to calm yourself down? Maybe sort through our memories? Are you? Why are you in my head? Is this your quirk? Izuku demanded, the shock of it all breaking him out of his stupor. I did introduce myself earlier, didn't I? Either way, I believe you should know, Izuku. Why don't you try to figure it out yourself? Midoriya began to protest, but his head pulsed with pain, and suddenly an answer came to mind. You're me, but not. A past me? Right in the eye. Good job. Let's get home now, shall we? No need to make our mother worry. Our mother. Izuku resisted the urge to say that she wasn't Iai's mom, but wasn't she? If Iai was Izuku and Izuku was Iai, doesn't that mean their lives and possessions are shared? This was all growing too confusing for him. His head pounded once more, and again with it flowed knowledge. She's a goddess, one of the strongest archons, actually, and connected to Celestia. Did that mean Midoriya was a goddess? A god, maybe? I don't know yet. I assume you've inherited my powers. What with you having my gnosis? Never thought I'd see it again, after I handed it to Yae, and she gave it to the Fatui. I suppose it's needed once more. She could hear him? In his thoughts. That was kind of creepy. But it also meant that he wouldn't have to talk to himself and risk people hearing and create an even creepier reputation. Midoriya finally continued to walk home as a conversation with him and Raiden started up. You sure do worry a lot. Why should the thoughts of others block your will and path? Our march towards eternity shall carry on in this new life, but maybe eternity could be redefined. Redefined? How is that possible? What you want, how you live, how you want to live, is your eternity. Marching forwards brings suffering and loss. Only by standing still can one achieve happiness. What did Izuku want? To be a hero, yeah? But that felt too shallow. Maybe it is too shallow, so think deeper. What type of hero? One that brings peace, that keeps Japan safe and keeps the lives of the citizens happy. That's it. That is your eternity. How we choose to get there is up to you. But in the end, you need to replace the current symbol of peace to keep Japan eternally at peace. His eternity was achievable, and he would make sure it happened. His life and the lives of many others depended on it. Chapter 2. Redefined, Start of Training. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Oh my baby! Inko Midoriya exclaimed as she gripped onto Izuku. You were out so much later than usual. I thought you got caught up in a villain attack, and I couldn't stop thinking about what that villain could be doing to you, and just I'm glad you're home safe. Wait, what happened to your clothes? Izuku's sweat dropped. He needed something to get her off of his trail with the clothes. He racked every inch of his brain, biting his lip as he did so. Finally figuring something out, he chuckled and said, "Oh, you see, I kinda got a quirk." Silence. Then, what? Neighbors of the Midoriya apartment would complain of slight ear pain and flooding from Inko's tears and screams. It took almost an hour for Midoriya to calm down his hysterical mother. He grasped her shoulders as they sank to the ground. His socks and pants got soggy with her tears that flowed like waterfalls. He shushed her as she babbled on, in a very loud state of shock. Izuku couldn't help but tear up at her reaction. However, if it was in happiness or empathy, he didn't know. Eventually, he guided her to their worn couch, a pink quilt laid over the back of it. He quickly grabbed some tissues for her, and she gratefully used them. I'm so happy. Show me Aizu. Oh, my baby is making me prouder every day. And that kind of stung, didn't it? She was proud of him for having a quirk. You know she means well. She's not Bakugu. Yeah, I was right. She wasn't Bakugu. If she had known she had inadvertently hurt Izuku's feelings, the tears would be flowing even harder than they were now. He was getting off track, feigning struggle, so it wouldn't look like he had years to practice the feel of it. Izuku pulled out both his spear and his gnosis. Inko gasped at the weapon. It was extremely sharp. Interestingly enough, Midoriya had found that no matter how much he used it never dulled. The blade would forever be sharp enough to draw blood with a simple touch. Wow. That's a very dangerous weapon, Inko noted, stepping back a bit. And a chess piece? Gnosis, Izuku corrected without thinking. He then blinked. Should he, or rather, could he tell his mom about the whole reincarnation situation and Celestia? I'd rather you not. Worst case scenario, she thinks you're crazy and sends you away. Best case, we could be putting her in danger with this knowledge. If I am here and awake, there must be a reason. And who's to say some of my past enemies haven't reincarnated as well? Yeah, I made some good points. Izuku started to correct himself, his stuttering making an appearance with his fear of Inko figuring it out. I am me. And mean, that's what I feel like it should be. Should be called. Just feels right, you know? Honey, it's your quirk. I won't judge you based on what you call it, or things associated with it, because that's your decision, Inko comforted, but it sounded more firm than usual. Izuku let out a sigh of relief. His muscles relaxed, finally letting go of all the stress they had been carrying. So, what is your gnosis do? Inko asked curiously, and began studying it slightly. It gives me extra powers. I don't know all of them for sure yet, but I do know for sure that part of it is electricity and storms, Izuku explained. It wasn't even a lie, just withholding the truth. Oh my. Well, you be careful and go practice your quirk. I'm going to make some cat sit on in celebration. Inko decided, leaving no room for argument. Maybe I should invite Mitsuki and her family over? It's been a while since I've seen Katsuki around here. Izuku paled. He didn't want to say no to his mom, because then it'd involve explaining why. But he also didn't want Kyle Bakugu over at his house. No, Raiden had taken over his body again and fixed the problem for him. Although, he wasn't sure if he liked how she did it. What? Did something happen between you two? Midoriya gripped onto the steering wheel of his body tightly, shoving EI out of the driver's seat. No. I just wanted to be a surprise. Wait until I get into UA or whatever hero school. Oh, okay. It'll just be me and you then. I'm so happy I could just die. Izuku chuckled and walked off to his room. Once he was alone, he sighed again and plopped onto his bed. His purple polearm has already been stored away, but his gnosis was still in his grasp. He stared at it, inspecting it carefully. What can this thing even do? Even though he knew he didn't have to speak, it just felt more natural to do so. It connects one to Celestia and grants them the power of an Archon. And what are those powers exactly? In my case, I had full control over the storms that raged in Inazuma, as well as basic electro powers. However, I could do that on my own quite sufficiently. This just made it easier. I created my plane of Euthymia and the puppet Raiden Shogun in order for me to avoid change. After that, I really had no use for it. It does, however, grant the user a longer lifespan. Izuku could feel excitement cracking like electricity inside of him. So, will I really be able to do all that? With time and training, perhaps. Your body is inherently different from mine, but I see no reason as to why you couldn't build up enough skill to unlock the full power of our gnosis. Wait, let's back up to what you said earlier. Does Celestia still exist? I do not know. Izuku lunged up from his bed and across the room. He quickly slammed open his laptop and frantically searched Juggle for any signs of his past life. None of the results had to do with it. Celestia brought up a retired yet alive hero who can fly like a shooting star. Gnosis, an old company that researched artifacts that have been lost in time, yet recorded. Abyss, endless edgy articles and blogs made by teens. Fatui, absolutely nothing. Fatui Harbingers, still nothing. Archon brought multiple fascinating sites on old Greek religions. Still, not the religion that used to praise him, and boy was that weird to think about. Old names of his old friends didn't carry any familiar faces with them. Defeated, Izuku slumped back in his chair. He supposed he had gotten too ahead of himself. If memory served right, his past life had to have been millions of years ago. Or even from another dimension. The anomaly traveler that taught EI a few things traveled dimensions quite frequently. Who's to say that EI's soul didn't do the same? That actually is quite probable. Inconvenient for us, yes, but there is no place in your history where mine can fit in. That really did suck. For information gathering, that is. It also made it less likely that he would ever encounter any of his past friends or associates. On a brighter note, that idea also included enemies. Izuku rubbed his face and groaned. He just wanted to sleep at this point, take a hot shower, eat dinner, and then sleep. Bullet. The next day, after getting all his previous wishes fulfilled, Izuku was trying to figure out the new aspects of his quirk. Wait, was it a quirk? If we knew if our quirk factor was active, then we would know. Let's not think about it too hard. Midoriya happily agreed to that notion. It was 9 a.m. on a Saturday, so he had the whole weekend to start training his newfound powers. He began to brainstorm ideas for what he could do. How about that old trash beach? It's rather secluded, so you won't get in trouble for practicing your quirk and also won't hurt anyone. You could clean it up as well to train your body. Community service is what a real hero would do, right? EI really was much smarter than he was given her credit for. Izuku wasn't necessarily a noodle, thanks to his weapons training, but he definitely could get stronger. Determined, he quickly got dressed in workout gear and began to head out. "Where are you going, sweetie?" Inko asked. Her eyes were lit up with a happiness that wasn't there before he revealed his quirk. Ouch. "Oh, I was going to go to Dagoba Beach and clean it up." He cursed himself internally for phrasing it like a question and making him seem more suspicious. "You're so sweet. I've missed when that beach was clean." "Good luck, sweetie." "Wait, why don't I make you some breakfast real quick?" Midoriya happily agreed, and after scarfing down his mother's delicious cooking, she made eggs. He set his dishes in the sink. He grabbed his water bottle, a towel, and a few granola bars. Inko kissed him goodbye, and he was off. Izuku walked to the beach, jogging occasionally. He decided that the trip from home to his beach could be his warm-up. Because of that, however, he took it easy. He stopped to do some dynamic stretching every once in a while, too. Once he had reached the beach and was looking over it from the sidewalk, he started to regret his decision. Only slightly, but still. The pure amount of trash that he would have to clear was ungodly, and he would know clear out a decent-sized space. "And I'll teach you how to open the plane of euthymia." Midoriya spurred to life, taking the stairs to the sand two at a time. Bracing himself into a squat, he began to lift a fridge that blocked his path, and thus started his hours of community service. An area about 7 meters wide and 8 meters long was cleaned after about 4 hours of hard work. Izuku realized that he didn't have anywhere to put the trash, so for the meantime he just pushed it off to the side. Later, he would try to find a trash company willing to let him rent a truck. "All right, I think I'm ready," Izuku announced. "Good work. Now, I want you to meditate. Sit cross-legged with a straight back posture. Close your eyes. Focus on your breathing. Yes, that's it. Let your thoughts come in and go right out. They're simply trivial. Take in your surroundings, but gently. First, feel the soft sand underneath you. Smell the trash and salt of the sea. Taste the leftover granola in your mouth. Listen to the waves as they come in. Imagine yourself floating away, no longer connected to the material world." Midoriya followed her words exactly, and it was almost freaky how much he genuinely felt like he was floating in empty space. It was a comfortable, familiar feeling. "Perfect. You're doing amazing. Now, remember that eternity we settled on earlier? Imagine that feeling. You are the #1 hero. Everyone feels an incredible sense of safety when you're around. Japan is happy and prospering. You have plenty of power and are almost a world leader at this point. Your influence knows no bounds. You have made your ideals reality. Now open your eyes." Izuku was startled at EI's voice coming not from inside him, but from in front. He complied easily and blinked away the resistance in his eyes. The resistance that came from a sudden change in the amount of light intake. Looking down, he saw he was sitting on gray sand, which had been carefully tended to with a pattern from that of a Zen garden. The sky was a storm, clouds rumbling with thunder and threatening to spill their rain. The clouds were a deep gray, but something behind them gave a deep red glow. Torii surrounded the Zen garden pattern, some buried in the sand and others standing proud and tall. Behind him was a black orb that somewhat resembled a sun, which was in a constant state of setting, or rising depending on how you looked at it. Despite resembling a sun, it wasn't bright, rather more an absence of light. Red solar waves dispersed from the not sun. The whole ambience felt intense and ominous. Apologies for the gloomy atmosphere. Raiden Ei spoke, and Izuku finally took in her appearance. Her short kimono was a cross between being more traditional and feminine and being more militaristic and harsh. She had a long purple braid that matched her purple eyes, which were accentuated with a beauty mark. It's what I've been used to. Would you like me to change it? Izuku shook his head and began to stand up. It doesn't bother me. Kind of feels like home, you know? Ei smiled softly. I would imagine that's because I, or rather you, spent most of my life residing here. He let out a soft chuckle at that. When you think about it, both of them were really quite loners. He hadn't had any friends since Kak Bakugu, and Ei spent the majority of her time alone in a separate plane of existence. Midoriya was shocked out of his thoughts when Ei suddenly summoned her spear. It was identical to his, which wasn't that huge of a surprise. It was mostly purple, with some shades so dark they were almost black, and others on the other end of the spectrum that were so light they were almost white. A few parts were gold to accentuate the weapon. The blade was slightly curved and got wider as it went on, with a gold electro symbol at the base of it. The end of the whole spear was a gold point that could actually be a good weapon on its own. Show me what you've learned on your own. Let's see how you stand against the power of the Shogun. Midoriya then proceeded to get his ass thoroughly beaten. Turns out the power of a woman who's multiple centuries old and had fought in multiple wars and against multiple giant beasts was much greater than a self-taught 14-year-old boy. What a shocker. Get up, Ei ordered after his fifth beatdown, her voice unwaveringly cold. This is no way to fight for your goals. This is the way to fail. However, if that was what you were looking for, I would be better at fighting if you actually taught me, Izuku grumbled. That made her pause. Holding her weapon at rest by her waist, the blade pointed downwards. She pursed her lips slightly as Midoriya laid spread eagle on the ground. He examined how the circular Zen pattern was never bothered by the movement of the people around it. It was kind of cool. My apologies, Izuku, Ei finally said. I've been used to opponents that have had formal training. Let me attempt to teach you properly, if you'd allow it. And that was how Midoriya ended up finally learning the basics of fighting with a polearm. He already knew some standard moves like blocking, jabs, and slashes. However, he learned he needed to learn to be quick, faster than a lightning strike. This was first to avoid being disarmed, and also to keep space between him and his opponent. To achieve the latter point, Midoriya needed to master quick backsteps and avoidance movements. Ei guided him with delicate hands on getting used to moving the spear swiftly in his grasp. He even learned a cool party trick that involved spinning the pole around his hand and even forearm. Ei even toned down her aggression and held back a bit so that she and Izuku could spar. He never really landed a hit on her, nor did he summon any more electricity like yesterday underneath the bridge. She gave him a few pointers on his attacks and demonstrated a few of her own. In the end, he was lucky that because she was technically a mental image, Ei couldn't really hurt him because she landed a few too many possibly lethal hits for him to be comfortable. Izuku suddenly shot up ramrod straight. Wait, how long has it been? Mom's gonna be worried sick. 6 hours, but don't worry, time passes a bit slower here. But you're right, we should most likely wrap this up. You learned fast, Izuku. Be proud of your advancement. Midoriya smiled warmly at her, sweat and grime pasting his hair to his skin. His muscles ached, and his hands were red from gripping the polearm so tightly. He knew he was going to get some calluses there eventually. How do I get out of here? Izuku questioned, wiping some of the sweat off of his hands and onto his pants. Thankfully, the first time entering it was the trickiest and you did it quite easily. All you have to do from now on to enter or exit is surround yourself in the feeling of eternity and then use our pole arm and tear open a gate. Midoriya did just that. He breathed slowly with his eyes shut and envisioned his eternity. The roar of crowds as he approached, the feeling of someone he saved gripping onto him as he carried them to safety. The overall security that followed his presence. The serenity Japan got to enjoy thanks to his hard work. Rapidly, he drew his spear and tore through the air in front of him. He was met with some struggle and the weird feeling of ripping open a portal between planes. Izuku opened his eyes and quickly stepped through, not wanting to have to repeat the process. Once he had returned to his normal world, he checked his phone. No calls from his mom. Only 3 hours had passed, thankfully. He would have to be a bit more mindful with time, even if it was only half the normal speed in the plane of Euthymia. Midoriya grabbed a bite of granola bar and swigged his water before stretching and starting to clean the trash out some more. From the stairs he took down that morning, there was less garbage to the left, so he decided to work on clearing that first. For the rest of the time while he worked, he had a smile on his face and a content feeling settled within him. Notes: I literally researched spear tactics for this chapter. One, hope you are happy, LMAO. I didn't explain it in story, but essentially with the whole Kaken/Bakugan name thing, Raiden is subtly changing Izuku's thought process from the inside. Might touch on that in story more, might not, who knows. I'm not going to treat this like an actual book, more like a hobby. Chapter 3, Growth, Fighting for Yourself. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. The next few weeks of Izuku's life would be on a repeated schedule. Wake up, quick run, get ready, school, clean, and or train, and then go home and eat. On weekends it changed slightly from school to clean and clean to train in the plane of Euthymia. The second weekend after he started working on the beach, Midoriya found a trash company, Yamada Brothers Garbage Collection, willing to help him. He was able to rent a truck, not that he could drive it. He got the personal number of one of the drivers, and that man would come and pick it up when needed. Izuku tried to do the trash slowly, so as to not bother the man so much. It actually worked out rather nice, because the truck they gave him was very oversized. The company actually gave him a discount. 1, because they felt bad for how young he was, and 2, because they respected his goals to become a hero, and they had wanted to see that beach clean for a long time. Izuku sold some of his hero merch, and gave them an honorable discharge, even if he wasn't really into them anymore, to keep up with the prices. He got a pretty hefty amount, and let's just say a few zeros and commas were added to his bank account. He still kept most of his All Might gear, as he did base his eternity off of that man. His mom noticed him starting to bulk up, and without prompting, she cooked more meals for him. The meals got bigger too, with an obviously researched and perfect amount of each nutrient needed to be healthy. Midoriya appreciated it greatly. His mom's cooking was always the best, and so when she did it for him regularly, immaculate. Well, as regularly as she could while working as a single mom to support herself and her son. While Hisashi did send the occasional child support check, it wasn't exactly something for them to rely on. When Inko wasn't able to cook, Izuku did, and sometimes even cooked dinner and left it in the fridge for her to eat whenever she worked late as a thank you for her hard labor. He still would always prefer his mom's meals, but he wasn't a bad chef himself. About 3 or 4 weeks into his battle training with EI, he finally unlocked the main aspect of his gnosis. It happened during a spar. He had recently been getting a good handle on the basic moves EI did in battle, and was currently using them against her. Now that he had a good, solid base to work from, it was a lot easier to learn new techniques from HeroTube, which, by the way, was very contrary to its name and didn't contain solely information about heroes. Apparently, it used to be called YouTube before Quirks and Heroes came around, and the app decided they needed a rebranding. Izuku dashed to the side, away from one of Raiden's ranged electro slashes. In the blink of an eye, however, the woman was nearly on top of him and ready to strike once more. In a panicked state, he had closed his eyes in the middle of battle like an idiot, swung his polearm through the air, and prayed to himself that it worked. It did work, just not in the way he thought it would. When Midoriya cracked open his eyes, he managed to catch a glimpse of a strange, green glow fading from around his face. The eye stood still in front of him and actually looked like she had been pushed back a bit. Green, not purple. Sparks lingered around her form. What happened? Izuku finally asked, although he had most likely pieced it together already. Raiden smiles, and he catches a bit of hunger in it. You used Electro. Although it was a bit strange, green instead of purple like usual. I guess the new world and new Archon had that effect. Midoriya matches her grin with his own. Guess that means my training's getting kicked up a notch. Raiden only laughed and answered him with a flurry of electrocharge slashes. Bullet. Despite those positive advancements in his life, not everything was going so smoothly. Izuku had created a hairpin almost exactly the same as Makoto's with Raiden's guidance. Turns out the pin was a handmade gift by EI for Makoto. Midoriya changed the colors a bit to suit his style more, but overall it was pretty much the same pin. He wore it with pride, well at home that is. Wearing it in public risked Kakin, not Kakin, Izuku, Bakugo, breaking it, and even if the pin didn't hold the same sentimental value anymore, he couldn't bear to see that happen. He did, however, use other flowery hair clips in place of it, just to feel a bit closer to his late sister. EI approved greatly of it. It did garner him some odd looks, but it's not like that was something he wasn't used to. One day, Izuku was eating his lunch peacefully in the classroom when suddenly a certain group of boys barged in. "Oh look, Kak Bakug," Kyle Bakuga called out. "The quirkless runt is here," as if he didn't know that already. "We both know he's only here to mess with us. Don't let him." Midoriya, following the advice of EI, said nothing and continued eating his tuna-filled onigiri. He had made it himself, and Raiden always enjoyed the new sensation of eating food prepared by your own hand. She was, after all, a terrible cook in her past life. "Look, he's got a gay little flower in his hair." Izuku couldn't help but flinch. He currently had in a fake, blue, and almost glowing flower that was oddly similar to one that could be found in the old nation of Mondstadt. Grabby hands reached for his head, and he easily and instinctively dodged. Apparently, that was the wrong thing to do. Bakugo sneered and lunged for Midoriya. He wanted to sit there and take the beating like he usually did, but Raiden had other ideas. Taking control of his body, she easily grabbed Bakugo's right arm, spun the boy around, and pinned him to the table. All while standing up from the desk, mind you. Bakugo looked over his shoulder with fire in his eyes, trying to get Izuku EI with an explosion. The fight inside of him quickly died when he saw the glare Midoriya, Raiden, was matching him with. The ends of his hair and his eyes were glowing a toxic green. "Stay away from me." Just as quickly as he stood up, Izuku suddenly stumbled away and switched back to his normal, timid, creepy personality. Once he let up, Bakugo immediately swung around and pushed Midoriya to the floor. Izuku curled up into a ball with his hands on his head to try and make the following beating hurt a bit less. That didn't stop the kicks from finding their way to his stomach, though. It never did with Casey Bakugo. It never did with Bakugo. And if he would spit up a bit of that tuna-filled onigiri later, well, that was between him, the trash can, and the janitor. Midoriya wasn't mad at EI. He understood why she did it. He just wished it could have been done on his terms. That's what she and him were talking about. As he limped home, unsurprisingly, no one during the rest of the school day referred him to the nurse, or even allowed him to go when he asked. Despite him obviously being in pain, and the huge bruises littering his body, of course. "I messed up, Izuku. I did what I did with Inazuma. I blinded myself with my own wants, and I couldn't see what was best for both of us." "It's fine," Izuku mumbled. "You were right. To do it, that is..." Silence on both ends created an equally awkward and yet peaceful situation. "Let's make a plan. I'll stand up to Bakugo," Midoriya offered. "I don't want to be walked on any more than you do." Acting out the plan did involve telling his mom a few things. Not that he could hide it anymore. What with her being home early that day and him literally limping into the apartment. He hated making his mom cry, but he couldn't keep it a secret anymore. In all honesty, Izuku probably cried the most out of the two Midoriyas. The reveal ended with Inko and Izuku holding each other on the couch, while one of her soap operas played. Neither of them paid attention to it, but EI definitely wanted to know more about these types of shows. Later, of course. So, Inko said, sniffling. What does this mean? I have a plan. While his plot got organized, Midoriya took out his pent-up frustrations on Raiden. Not that she minded. He'd endured 10 years of bullying and harassment. He deserved to have an out for it all. Besides, she enjoyed seeing him improve in battle and grow a spine. Especially now that he started to match some of her strikes with counters of his own. He's also started to get used to the sheer range of the weapon and his electro abilities. Midoriya began to practice some of his moves outside of the plane. Multiple refrigerators or other large pieces of garbage had been sliced in half whenever he simply felt too tired to lift them. The man driving the truck for him did look a little concerned, though, at how easily Izuku could carry some of those giant objects. Inko was more busy with work, so she could help with Izuku's scheme. So, she didn't notice him training more often or bulking up. The day that it would finally happen, now that everything was prepared, was a tense yet exciting morning for Inko and Izuku. She cooked him a breakfast complete with eggs, rice, and sausage links. He gladly ate it all, knowing he'd need some protein for what was about to go down. On his way out, Inko kissed him on the forehead before sending him off. It didn't take much to aggravate Bakugo and set the ball rolling. He'd been much more aggressive towards Midoriya ever since Raiden took over 2 weeks ago. All Izuku had to do was not cower and flinch whenever Bakugo jokingly lunged at him, and the game started. Huh? Did ya grow a pair finally? Think you're better than me now? Hook! Izuku kept walking. Well, get back here. Freak Dekus like you don't get to look down on people like me. Line. Fuck off, Bakugo. And sinker. It took a lot of hard will to not give into the weeks of muscle memory that screamed at him to dodge. Or to at least block. I mean, really, how much more obvious could Bakugo be about his attack? It was so incredibly telegraphed a child could probably figure it out. Not to mention, he always lead with that stupid right hook. Despite all this, Izuku let it land on his cheek. If you want to get away with fighting, never throw the first punch. Again, something a child could figure out. Once it did land, however, it was game on. Midoriya easily sidestepped the next explosion-packed punch, the speed of fighting with a spear being shown in his movements. When Bakugo stumbled from his swing, not landing like he expected, Izuku was already behind him in a flash. He almost summoned his polearm, but he knew that this whole plot would be ruined if he used his quirk. Instead, he used his leg to sweep Bakugo's feet out from under him. Izuku was on top of him instantly, keeping him pinned in a certain position with enough weight on his pressure points so that Bakugo couldn't effectively fight back. Izuku twisted Bakugo's arm to a painful angle and leaned in close to the boy's ear. Say, Uncle. And never, you shitty bastard. Get the hell off me. Izuku pulled and turned harder, so much so that he could feel the creak in Bakugo's muscles and bones. Say, Uncle. His eyes glowed that sickly green again, and later Bakugo would swear he saw sparks flying from them. Go. To hell. Bakugo grunted out through clenched teeth. He had to give it to the boy. He was stubbornly strong. If you insist. Before Bakugo could react and get himself properly out of the hold, Midoriya struck his jaw at the perfect spot to properly rattle his brain. The result? Bakugo Katsuki was knocked out by the creepy, quirkless freak bullet. Inko Midoriya was a patient, loving woman. She would easily drop anything for her son. Even before he got his quirk, she loved him more than she loved herself. In all honesty, she wasn't sure if she would be this happy with her life if her baby boy wasn't in it. She existed because of him, just as much as he existed because of her. So, that's why she acted surprised when Alder Middle School called and said her baby boy attacked another student unprovoked. That's why she gave her son a false, disappointed look whenever she saw him in the principal's office. That's why she hid her pride when she spotted the forming bruise on Katsuki's face while he waited outside the office. Inko may have been a patient, loving woman, but when it comes to bullies, she had no kindness to spare. And as far as she was concerned, this whole school was filled to the brim with bullies. Big, fat bullies who had no mercy for her son. Why should she have mercy for them? So you're saying my son, Izuku, brutally attacked Bakugo here until the boy cried for mercy? Inko leaned back in her chair. She was almost surprised at how well Izuku had planned this out. She barely had to change her lines at all. Yes, ma'am. I know it's hard to believe. These types of kids are usually sweethearts at home. But I assure you Midoriya is a true troublemaker at school. He is constantly interrupting class, instigating fights, etc., etc. May I see some videos? And what? Your school has security cameras, correct? I want to see the videos of my son instigating these fights. Unedited, of course. The principal began to sweat, but tried and failed to keep cool. Well, it happens mostly in classrooms. We only keep them in the hallways, so we can't show you any. Apologies, ma'am. Then, could you show me the video of this most recent fight? The one I was called here for. It happened in the hallway, correct? Out of the corner of her eye, Inko saw a small grin on Izuku's face. Good. He should be proud of himself. And no. And why not? Do you not want me to see all the dirty malpractice that has been occurring at this school? All the court discrimination, negligence, lying, etc., etc.? Inko met the man's eyes coldly. Using his words back at him was oh so satisfying. Honestly, this may be grounds for a lawsuit, if I'm not mistaken. It has been a while since I've touched up on my law. It wasn't grounds for a lawsuit at all, actually. Not that the school knew that. Intimidation tactics at their finest. Why you can't sue us? We'll expel your kid. No other school in the area will take him. And why is that? Because he's quirkless. That's why. He's a useless, underdeveloped brat who, quite frankly, doesn't deserve the nice treatment we've been giving him. Honestly, we'd be better off if we did kick him out. You were recording all that, right, honey? Sure did. Izuku grinned as he pulled out his phone and set it on the table. Still not stopping the recording, just in case. You can't record this. That's illegal. I do believe this is public property. Therefore, it is within our rights to record others here. What isn't legal is the court discrimination you just admitted to, as well as the other instances of discrimination and child neglect caught on your very own security cameras. Inko stated all of this very calmly, yet the aura around her grew almost murderous. If you don't want me to report this to the police, you will leave me and my son alone. Oh, and I'm pulling him out of this school. Surely you don't think there's not a single school we can go to other than you who would accept him. In the end, the Midoriyas left that building with a victory underneath their belts. The rest of their day consisted of updating his quirk file, reporting Aldera Middle School to the police, and getting ice cream. Notes. Did I base Inko off of my mom? Yes. Yes, I did. Also, do y'all prefer frequent updates with shorter chapters, or more spaced out updates with longer chapters? Well, that was an amazing story. That's all for today. There's a lot more chapters to this story. Link to the story will be in the description, along with the link to the author. Hope you all enjoyed this story as much as I do, and have a good day. Eclipse out.